Welcome to the Shade Chronicles, an anthology-style podcast featuring short works of fiction and serial prose, specifically with a sci-fi and horror flavor. Your hosts for the podcast are Derek Leftridge and Lawrence Trokey.
Hi, this is Derek Leftridge, and I would like to welcome you to the Shade Chronicles.
Hi, this is Lawrence Trokey, and I also want to welcome you and thank you for spending your time with us. Let's get started with our first story.
Killer Ad by Derek Leftridge. From the case file of Carson Link by Detective T.P. Klein of the Manford County Police Department from interviews and research analysis. Carson Link went missing early in the morning of October 10, 2010, while traveling down Highway 5. This is explained by the cell phone record pings and cross-configuration of towers from the northeast section 5.61.01 of Manford County. The last known transaction was made approximately at 3:40 a.m. from the transcript of a voice-to-text message sent to his brother. The text transcript details information about visiting their mother with options of dates to make the 90-minute trip to the retirement community their mother lives at currently. Since no other pertinent details or activity is in the code, this is considered the last text he may have sent of his life. There are other miscellaneous codes and data that are part of the text transcript, but at this time it has been deemed to be interference from towers as odd anomalies get recorded in addition to other data in certain areas. Paralegal Manny Cole of the Tyne, Mack & Foster law firm went to college originally to be an audio engineer, but after 1 year decided to change his major to law to please his mother. He worked hard and did well, then graduated with his law degree, but stayed with his love of audio tech in his spare time. When the case of missing Carson Link came to TM&F, Manny was given a chance to work with lead attorney Anthony Tyne to help with researching the case. Working with detectives, Manny was able to get access to Carson's cell phone records, along with crucial files and evidence about the situation up to this point. Even though there was extensive work done on the detective's part, there was, in his opinion, minimal information regarding the cell phone's technology. Within the files was the basic information about the ping on cell towers, and text message transcripts were available, but there were other cell tech coding that did not seem to be investigated and considered not important and interference. Maybe this was not important, or just avoided by the detectives because the main info was easy to see. However, Manny was intrigued and got to work into looking deeper into the data. Possibly a clue or maybe more information could be determined, Manny thought, if he can take a deeper dive into the mobile forensic audio research. After looking at the cell phone data going back and forth from the two closest towers, there was a lot of navigation and ISP protocol location data as expected, but something else was buried and snaking through the mobile language. If it was in one area, it would have been a lot easier and faster to find, but that was not always how it is in computer speak. However, the specific information was during a certain time of the day that was detected by the specific time when the towers were activated with cell phone connection and data. The time was between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. This had been known by many who investigated from day one because that was when the voice text was made from Carson to his brother. However, the records show a lot of activity at the end of the text message for about 15 seconds. This could be signal handling off the signal from one tower to another, since Carson was driving at the time of leaving the message. Oddly though, the 15 seconds of data not only have code but actual words randomly intertwined within the data. The words were come, on, couch, and town. And Manny thought to himself, could this be something that was picked up within Carson's car, but what does it mean? Looking up different combinations of the word, he gets a listing for a furniture store owned by Mickey Arthur off of Highway 5 in Manford County named Couchtown. Further detail about Couchtown is that it is a small furniture store business. In addition to details about the store and a listing that details how the owner, Mickey Arthur, decided to make a radio commercial to advertise this business that would run twice a week, and he was very proud of the opportunity and shared the information with anyone who would listen or was in earshot. Then there was a link to the radio commercial with transcript of these words: "Come on down to Couchtown. We have all the sofa sectionals, love seats, chases, and sleepers at the best price. Come on down. Come on down. Come on down to Couchtown. Located in the 210 Plaza off Highway 5. Come on down to Couchtown. Get here now. The next day, Manny takes a trip to the Couchtown location, driving down the 2-lane Highway 5, with trees bordering the road for most of the drive. The trees begin to minimize as he gets closer to the 210 Plaza area and then takes the 210 exit that leads him into the strip mall parking lot. 210 Plaza has a handful of stores, but Couchtown is by far the smallest in the strip. However, as Manny enters the business, the owner, Mickey, makes up for the size of the store with his huge personality as he immediately walks up to Manny asking if he can help him settle into his new Chase Lounge. Manny shakes Mickey's hand and quickly explains why he's there and about the words he found on the data that causes Mickey to laugh. A little too hard, but a laugh anyway. He explains it is from the radio commercial and that it is his voice. He explains how they are not one of those big box furniture stores, but wanted to advertise and could only afford an off-hour time slot, so the commercial plays twice a week in the window of 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Even though the advertisements do help, it would be better if it had a larger area zone that could receive the signal at the time of evening. Also, the 3 to 4 a.m. slot is not only cheap because it is not a prime drive time, but also because there is a maintenance done at the same time the signal range goes down very low. The signal is about a 10-mile radius at the time other than the normal 50-mile, so it is only heard by those closer to the radio tower at that time of the morning. Manny lets Mickey know about his legal investigation into the disappearance of Connor and how the store radio commercial was part of the cell voice text. Mickey looks up to the heavens and says, "Oh yes, I remember that situation and that the police came to the store and asked if any of us knew anything. Not sure how we would, since at the time of the morning we were all definitely in bed. However, my warehouse manager told the police that he saw a car on the way in that day. He said he saw it off to the side of the road, almost in the ditch, since there's no shoulder on Highway 5. I believe it was the car Mr. Connor was driving when he went missing, and the police seized it and took it away, but you probably already know that from the case files." Mickey ended the conversation by stating that in the 5-mile radius of the tower, there are only cows, some horses, and 3 or 4 farms, of which only one was really active, so only someone driving on the road at the time would even heard the ad. The farm and wood shop owned by Mr. Russell Moore is the only active place in the small radius. After leaving Couchtown and checking the list of those interviewed, Russell Moore's name is listed as one of those interviewed because of his proximity to the area, pinpointed from the cell data where Carson's car was last seen. There was a possibility he may have seen or heard something, but from the information in the files, he did not hear or see or know anything. However, noted in the files by the detective, there was a note from the interview suggesting a revisiting and possible check of his property since he is in such a remote location off Highway 5, and Russell seemed to be very off-putting and short. No additional interview or visit to the property was recorded in the case files, so Manny was wondering if the second interview and inspection of the area had actually been done. Manny's contact with the police was Detective Wilson, who he contacted to discuss if a visit to Russell Moore was conducted more than once and if the property was checked out. With a grumpy sigh, Wilson said that information should be in the case files. Manny mentioned it was not, so with another sigh, Wilson announced he was going to go to the location, check things out, and get back to Manny in about an hour. It had been a little over a half an hour since his talk with Detective Wilson, and Manny was feeling edgy and impatient, so he decided to head out to Russell's property off Highway 5 since the detective was probably already there. He notices that he missed a text from Wilson about 20 minutes after their phone call that says, "Get over here, I found something you need to see." Even though Russell was not assumed a good suspect from all the information in the files, many felt there were too many convenient coincidences involving Russell and his property. Once at the property, Manny looks around and sees Detective Wilson's car parked on the side of the house. Getting out of his car, Manny makes his way up the front steps to the front door that's partially open. He pauses for a moment, then pushes the door all the way open and walks in and says, "Hello? This is Manny Cole. Hello?" There's no answer, and the living room is dark and musty smelling. With the late afternoon sun lowering in the sky, large shadows are casting all over the room. Making his way through the living room, Manny looks right and left for a sign of life. However, he sees a partly open door at the far end of the kitchen that looks like it leads to the basement. An overwhelming feeling of anxiety hits Manny as he reaches for the basement door to open it all the way and steps down the first step. He again calls out to Detective Wilson, and still no response. Manny slowly begins to descend the steps. As the steps creak under his feet, Manny can hear some rustling, a thumping, and a faint radio playing in the distance of the basement. At the last step before the basement floor, he begins to look right, then left. With a bit more light coming in from the small basement window, he can see more than in the living room above. To his right is a washer and dryer and a storage room with a chain link fence around it. To his left, about 10 feet, is a room with a bright light coming from underneath the bottom of the door, and this is where the sounds seem to be coming from. For a third and final time, Manny calls out to the detective, and he makes his way across the basement floor to the room with the light. He pushes the door open slowly and feels chills and dread as he recognizes from the case file pictures Russell, who is sitting in a rocking chair in the small room, his head hitting the wall behind him. That was the thumping. Russell is facing up to the ceiling with his eyes closed. His hands are on his legs. There's a gun on his lap which appears to be blood smeared along with his shirt. A body is lying face up on the floor at Russell's feet and to his left and appears to be dead. In a shocked state, Manny can barely speak but asks, "Russell Moore?" Russell stops rocking and puts his hand on the gun. He then looks slowly at Manny, grabs the gun with his right hand, and begins to aim it at Manny. Suddenly there is a loud crack as the gun is fired and Manny falls to the ground. He takes a quick inventory and realizes he was pushed and not shot. Then another crack sound is heard from above. Quickly looking up, Manny realizes Detective Wilson was the person who pushed him to the ground and out of the way of the shot. Russell slumps in his chair and his gun falls to the floor. Detective Wilson is standing in the doorway, aiming his gun as police sirens can be heard in the distance. Getting helped up by Wilson, Manny hears others running into the room and feels a breeze as other detectives run past him quickly and towards Russell. As Manny gets his bearings, he sees the other detectives grabbing and restraining Russell, and Detective Wilson asks, "Are you okay?" Manny shakes his head yes. Russell's on the floor, face down now, with his handcuffs on and blood on his right side. Quickly, 3 detectives pick up Russell and assist him towards the stairs to go up into the living room area. Manny slumps against the wall as Wilson walks to the chair Russell was sitting in. Detective Wilson, reaching up and pushing on a spot above the wall and the rocking chair, says, "Well, we got that sickle, and good thing, because this was not his first abduction." Manny responds with, "How do you know, Detective?" A click is heard as what looks like a wall with a map on it opens and reveals another hidden room. Wilson walks in the room and Manny follows and sees a grimy mattress covered with a stained sheet on the floor, multiple chains and collars attached to one wall, and what could only be blood stains on the walls and floor, along with various clothes, shoes, and other pieces of material. Detective Wilson explains, "When I got here, I did not see anyone in the house, so I walked around the property. Hidden in some brush and in some cases partly buried were different cars with blood smeared on the outside, and that is when I texted you. I went back to the house and to the basement and was ambushed by Russell. We had a bit of a scuffle and I grabbed what I could and stabbed him in the side. He pushed me off and ran into this room. I heard someone moving upstairs and hid by the chain link cage. After I saw it was you, I made my way to the room. This was a secret torture room where he took everyone he abducted. Unfortunately, we could not help Mr. Link or any of the others, and what the hell they had to go through, but it has ended." Manny asks, "So he was just a serial killer that had been abducting and killing for years and no one got suspicious?" Wilson responds, "Well, I guess so. This isn't like the movies where there's a secret story or reason. Some people just keep under the radar and have fucked up ways of getting their jollies." Exhausted and saddened, Manny makes his way up the stairs to the main floor, and once at the top he sees Russell being secured to a gurney with handcuffs and straps and being taken out of the home to a waiting ambulance. Taking a breath and pulling his cell phone from his pocket to communicate what happened to his boss, Manny glances around the living room. Under the stacks of newspapers, books, and just regular filth, he notices the furniture in this room was from the Couchtown store. He remembers seeing this type of furniture at the store while in the warehouse and from the sales flyers. Apparently, Russell was a Couchtown frequent customer, and in between purchases, he brutally killed innocent people. Maybe that silly commercial was a motivator for not only furnishing but murder. Thinking to himself and quietly chuckling again, Manny hears in the distance, coming from the basement, a radio that announces, "Come on down to Couchtown."
Attention Shade Chronicle podcast listeners. The merchandise store is now open. You can find the merchandise store on the merchandise tab on the Shade Chronicles website, which is at theshadechronicles.com. Find premium t-shirts, hoodies, tank tops, travel mugs, ball caps, and more at the Shade Chronicles podcast merchandise store. We now resume your regular programming. Instant Karma by Lawrence Trokey. Reginald Wheeler had lived a charmed life. Anyone looking at where he came from, what he had been given, and what he had accomplished due to his huge boost from his upbringing, social status, and financial considerations would have agreed this was one lucky bastard. He had never really known failure or true disappointment. Certainly he was sheltered from some of this by his parents and family. However, despite their efforts, you would have thought Reginald would have eventually run up against something that would have knocked him on his ass. That's just how life works, right? Not for Reginald. He always landed on his feet. Somehow he always managed to win. It wasn't that he was smarter or faster or stronger than anyone else. He was normal for the most part, his good looks and excellent health notwithstanding. He had no superpower or skill he would engage to help him get over the top. He was just lucky. Extremely lucky. In 4th grade, he entered an art contest with the prize being tickets to a baseball game. Reginald really liked baseball, but he was not much of an artist. Still, his parents encouraged him to try. Even with their urging, Reginald procrastinated, waiting until the last possible minute to begin the project. He had to paint a fall scene which also contained a message of peace, the school's fall theme. He got out his paints and canvas, but before he could begin, his dog knocked over his easel and the paints. The paint splattered the canvas, and Reginald thought it was ruined, and there was no time to start over. He decided to submit the splattered canvas anyway, having promised his parents he would try, and he did not want to disappoint them. To his surprise, Reginald won. The panel of judges, the art teacher, a history teacher, an English teacher, and the school janitor, were impressed with the experimental approach Reginald used in his work. They all commented on the maturity and insightfulness of his design. Reginald couldn't believe he won, but from that moment on, he knew he had life dicked. He achieved every goal he set for himself. He always got the job he interviewed for, whether he wanted it or not. He never went to prom or any social function by himself, and never with a group. His date would always be the cutest girl in the school. He got his own car at 16 years old, not an old beater or used car, but a brand new one, shiny and cool. The future was bright for Reginald, but the here and now was pretty sweet too. His streak would go on well into his adulthood, until that fateful Friday. Now, normally, the universe doesn't give a shit about you or me. It just keeps on expanding and spinning galaxies like an old vaudeville plate spinner. The intricate systems it maintains and the immense power it regulates is unimaginable. So to think that it would take any time at all to worry about the mundane details of anything so insignificant as the worries and fears of a human being on a tiny speck of a planet in a non-distinguished galaxy that's one of billions, well, surely you can see how ridiculous it would be. Except, every once in a while, once in a blue moon, so to speak, when an imbalance presents itself, like the extraordinary life of Reginald Wheeler and his good fortune as in comparison to his fellow beings in the universe, well, that gets the universe's attention with gusto. As a matter of fact, as rare as it is, when the universe did notice Reginald's extreme good fortune, it knew it had to do something quickly to make up for the years of missing the outlier's good luck and great timing. Reginald Wheeler was about to undergo the universal equivalent of a stock market correction of biblical proportions. It started with his alarm failing because the power in his luxury condo had gone off in the night due to a freak explosion of a transformer nearby. When he woke up, he realized the problem and quickly got ready for work. Today was supposed to be his day, the day of his promotion to senior partner. Today's promotion would set the course for the rest of his life, so it was a pivotal day. He could not be late. A coffee stain on his shirt later, he had to settle for a stale Pop-Tart for breakfast instead of his normal energy smoothie since his power was still out. He charged his phone in the car as he made his way to the freeway and on to work. The drive would normally take about 20 minutes, but not today, oh no. The universe made sure of that. First, he got stuck behind a school bus in his neighborhood and had to endure every stop it made until he could get to the main road. Then an accident had traffic backed up as he made his way to the freeway entrance. Figuring he could make up some time on the freeway got him pulled over by a speed trap. The universe was starting to enjoy this. A speeding ticket later found him finally pulling into the covered garage of his firm. Trying to pull into his reserved spot, he found an unmarked van blocking his way. The frustration of the morning was taking its toll on poor Reginald. Having never really experienced aggravations like this before, he didn't have the proper coping mechanisms in place to deal with it. There was no circuit breaker, learned through experience, to keep the emotional response to his vexations in check. At first, he blasted the van with a barrage from his car horn. It had no effect. He put his window down and yelled at the van, "You're in my spot!" That too went unnoticed. His anger now at a boiling point, Reginald flashed his bright lights at the van so vigorously, it looked like the van was on the dance floor of a disco. Still nothing from the van. Then Reginald snapped. The universe held its breath. He burst out of his luxury sedan in full rage mode. The guy behind the wheel of the van was casually smoking a cigarette, unaware of the hurricane about to descend upon him. Reginald stomped to his door, grabbed the handle, and yanked the door open to confront his victim. The driver turned his head to face Reginald with little to no concern. "You shit jerk face! You're in my spot, and I need my spot now." Having never really cursed anyone before, Reginald's insult was a little clunky. The universe chuckled. "Oh, am I?" responded the driver. He slowly stepped out of the van, and Reginald realized he was twice his size. The work overalls the man wore barely concealed his muscular frame, especially in the area of the sleeves, which seemed to be stretched tightly around the man's arms. He gave Reginald a push to back him off a bit, and Reginald could feel the power of the man's strength. Still, Reginald was not used to being confronted in such a way, but he was most certainly accustomed to getting what he wanted from the people he considered inferior, socially and economically speaking. Reginald got back in the man's face. "I want to know who you are and who you're working for. They will get a full report from me on your rude behavior and lack of cooperation." Before Reginald could finish, the man laid Reginald out. The universe winced at this. The man looked over his handiwork as another man approached. "What the hell did you do?" the second man asked the driver of the van. "This guy got in my face all mouthy and shit. He had it coming. Did you forget we're on a job here? We can't have this kind of attention. If the cops show up, we're screwed, you moron." The second man, also in work coveralls, scratched his head trying to figure out what to do. The driver had a thought. "Why don't I put him in the trunk of his car? Then we finish the job and get out of here." "You're such a fucking meathead," the second man shot back. "He saw you in the van. When he wakes up and gets out of the trunk, he'll go straight to the cops. Then we're made. We got to take care of him now. Put him in the van." The driver did as instructed. He laid Reginald on the floor of the unmarked panel van next to a rolled-up piece of carpet. The men got in the van and then drove away. They exited the parking garage and got on the freeway. Reginald slowly regained consciousness. The pain in his jaw was intense. He realized he was laying on the floor of a van next to a piece of rolled-up carpeting. He wasn't sure how he got there, but he did remember the giant asshole with the van and put it all together. The guy in the van kidnapped him. He laid on the floor of the van and tried to take in his surroundings. Then he heard the two men talking in the front. "So we take the bodies to the airport to the usual dumping place?" the driver asked. "That's how I figure it. We need to pop the fresh one, though, before we dump them. You got the silencer with you?" The driver nodded. "It's in the toolbox next to this saw." Reginald gasped. So did the universe. These two thugs were going to kill him and dump his body somewhere at the airport. They mentioned bodies, and that's when Reginald took notice of the rolled-up carpet next to him. He slowly crawled to the end of the roll and looked inside. It was dark, but he could make out the glassy doll-like eyes of the corpse inside, staring into eternity. With a hole in his forehead the size of a quarter, a small trickle of blood slowly rolled down the corpse's face. Reginald gasped again. The universe did not. It knew it may have gone too far with Reginald in trying to set things straight. After all, Reginald may have been very fortunate in life, with tremendous advantages that most people on the planet did not have. But it wasn't comfortable with visiting this much adversity on him. It had gone too far and needed to right the ship, it thought. The van pulled into the airport-covered garage and drove to the end of the building, near the entrance to the shipping area of the airport, where trucks unload cargo to be sent by air. After they checked in at the security gate with their fake credentials, they drove to the dock area. The van went unnoticed for the most part by the other workers in the area. The van parked in the last of the spots in the dock area, conveniently away from other trucks and vans unloading cargo. Reginald knew he had to do something now or he would never get the chance again. He jumped up to the back doors of the van, worked the handle, and opened the doors. Without looking back, he ran as fast as he could into the warehouse. "Shit, you see that guy? Let's go!" The second man shouted at the driver. They exited the van and ran after Reginald. Reginald ran into the warehouse looking for a place to hide. He saw a large wooden crate, which looked big enough for him to hide inside, so he went to it. He opened the shipping container, hoping he could climb in before the thugs caught up to him. Getting a splinter while climbing into the large wooden crate, he did manage to cover the crate just as the men entered the warehouse. They spread out looking to see if Reginald was hiding somewhere inside. They put their guns away so as not to draw any attention to themselves from the airport workers who were going in and out of the warehouse loading planes. They went through the warehouse once and then met back at the entrance from the connecting hallway from the loading dock. "You see the little shit?" the driver asked. "Nope," replied the second man, and then said, "Look, we need to take care of the first package before it gets too late. Let's go back to the van and do that. Then come back here and find him. He can't have gotten far." Reginald breathed a sigh of relief since he heard their conversation from inside the box. They were going away, which meant he could escape. However, the universe didn't see it that way. It figured it had done enough to set things back on course. Time to get back to the plan. Reginald was about to exit the container when he heard the lid slam down firmly in place. Then the box started to move. He tried desperately to open the box, but he could not. The box continued to move until it was set down somewhere. Reginald still could not open the box, and he started to panic. Then he felt movement again. But this time it wasn't just the box moving. He felt like the box was in something else much bigger, and that was doing the moving. He realized the container was loaded on a plane, and he was now en route to some unknown destination. He used the light on his cell phone to scan the box's contents. They appeared to be dry goods and supplies for someone camping somewhere. There were some hand tools, too. He thought about using them to break open the box, but he was too scared to try. After the day he was having, he did not want to tempt fate. The universe smiled at this thought. He fell asleep in the box, having decided not to break out. He did not know how long he slept, but he was sore all over from sleeping in the cramped space. He snacked on some of the goods in the box to satisfy his hunger. He hadn't eaten anything in a long time, it seemed. A loud noise startled him, and he started to panic again. He didn't know what the noise meant. Were they landing the plane? Had they already landed and now they were unloading? Unfortunately for Reginald, neither was the case. The plane was a cargo plane flying over a remote part of the Congo in Africa. It was dropping supplies to a group of Christian missionaries who were trying to reach out to a small tribe of the Mai Mai people, a group known for violent tendencies and cannibalism. Reginald was in one of 3 crates being dropped to resupply the missionaries. He figured the airdrop part out when the sudden sensation of falling came over him. It lasted several seconds until he felt a jerk that slammed him into the floor of the box. The parachutes attached to the cargo box deployed to keep him from smashing into the ground of the field it landed in. The landing was quite jarring, but Reginald survived. It did dislodge the box's lid, which allowed him to leave the box. He found himself standing in the middle of a field with tall grass that came up to his knees. He saw in the distance a tree line and what appeared to be a campsite. He figured his luck must be turning. He managed to escape being killed by the thugs and now he was going to be rescued by the folks in the campsite. With any luck, he'd be back home soon, and he'd be able to put this whole terrible experience behind him. He entered the campsite, but something was not right. There was a fire in the center of the site, and a cast-iron cooking tripod, which held a black pot with a lid. Reginald looked inside the pot and realized it was full of freshly made stew. But no one was around to tend to it, and no one was in the camp to eat it. He saw a journal lying on a table under the tent near the campfire. He picked it up, hoping to find a clue to figure out where he was and why the camp was empty. He started with the last page that had an entry. Fortunately, it was written in English. It was dated yesterday, and it read, "We are still waiting for a response from the Mai tribe. We were hoping to have their answer about receiving our evangelists so we could present the gospel to them. It is understandable it would take the tribe some time to consider our request, given that we are asking them to give up a past of violence and cannibalism, which is so heavily ingrained in their culture." Reginald stopped reading there. Cannibalism? He was stuck in some remote forest surrounded by cannibals? The universe, if it could, would have high-fived itself just then. The last sentence of the entry caught his eye, and he read it slowly. "We found discarded bones on the trail to the Mai village that appeared to be fresh. We must consider our friends lost. It's only a matter of time now. God help us." As he put the journal down, Reginald could hear in the distance the pounding of tribal drums. The universe dusted off its proverbial hands and then went back to spinning galaxies.
All right, well, there we go. And let's see. Let's start talking about these stories a little bit here. You can go ahead first, Lawrence.
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with Killer Ad, since that was the first story.
Okay.
So one of the things that I was really psyched about was just, my God, man, you had so much detail in the beginning of that story about the cell phone and how the cell phone towers work and how the data transfers. I got to know, do you work for a cell phone company? What's the deal?
No, I do not. I pay attention to a lot of true crime stuff, and I watch a lot of that stuff. Unfortunately, for some people, they don't like that, but I do. And there's a lot of technical stuff, a lot of court-related stuff, and they talk about those things. What I had in there was probably not accurate, but it sounded good. So I thought it was pretty good. I mean, some of it kind of is based in accuracy, but it's also just what I thought, visualized that, it would be kind of in a report, in a police report.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, the level of detail was really, really down to the, in the weeds. I mean, I was really taken by the level of detail. So the idea that this advertisement is how, they find the killer, but also there might be, you kind of hint at it towards the end that there might be something about it that influenced the killer. Kind of talk us through that part of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of my stuff, it's a lot of short stories, so I can't really I haven't delved into the big part of it. But yeah, it was sort of, I kind of left that open, but yeah, the ad was the thing that brought it. That was the biggest part of the whole thing, that made the connection to everything and helped them solve the case. And then the stuff that was in his house was just kind of a weird, awkward kind of thing. Like, he was a fan of that place. He was close to that place, the store. So he bought the furniture and, maybe in some weird way lived out some fantasies that were involved with the furniture store and these people. And so, but I didn't really go into it. But yeah, I kind of left it open-ended so people could kind of make their connections.
So is it maybe like the formaldehyde coming off the furniture, the off-gassing of that's causing this guy to go crazy and kill people?
It is now.
Well, there you go. So, yeah, and again, just, love the true crime grittiness of it, and the detective being there, at the end kind of saving the day and wrapping everything up. I just thought that was all very much in that whole genre, very true to that, and delivered and written very well.
Thank you. Yeah, I liked it too. It was something that came to me from watching true crime stuff and just kind of thinking of the way it would process out, and I liked the environment that it was in, and it worked out really well, so thank you.
Cool. So the next story featured in the episode was Instant Karma.
Right, and I really like that one. Like I was saying to you, it's got a whimsical kind of feel. It's especially with the audio. I like the idea that the universe is bored with us, so it's being a jerk, especially to this guy. And so kind of give me an idea of what you were thinking when you kind of wrote this one, in the sense of why the universe. I mean, you kind of explained it, I guess, in the story, but why the universe, and what was it that appealed to you about writing this one?
Yeah. So all of it came from the name, basically. You got the John Lennon song, Beatles song, Instant Karma.
Okay.
That has really nothing to do with what I ended up with. But for some reason, that title, for whatever reason, came to me and stuck in my head. And I thought about it, and it was like, well, what if karma was instant? Most of the time, and again, I don't want to offend anyone who actually believes in this belief system about karma and reincarnation and so on, because I don't know much about it. I just know what maybe pop culture has taught us about it. But going from just that standpoint, I'm going to say that karma is one of those things that comes back at you after having lived a certain kind of life or having done certain kinds of things in your life. And I thought, well, that process is one of those things that takes a little bit of time. What if it was instant, like the title of the song, Instant Karma? What if you did something shitty and then all of a sudden, bang, you got the judgment for that and the consequences and the punishment for it. And from there, I thought, well, what if we had a person that had avoided that for most of his life? And maybe it's just me being jealous of, someone who's rich and handsome and has all the breaks in life and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's who I chose to be the victim of this phenomenon of instant karma. So we start off hearing how Reginald is just this great, lucky, rich guy that has all the breaks in life. And then the universe notices what's going on and says, wait a minute, we haven't done anything to this guy. I mean, everybody else in the universe has to deal with the ups and downs of life, has to deal with the daily grind, the disappointments that come, the struggle to make it, to get ahead. This guy hasn't suffered any of those things, so we're going to set the scales in balance all at once.
Right.
And that's instant karma.
That was good. That's good. Yeah, I like the premise of it, and I like the journey of the character, kind of what they went through, and how you described it and everything like that was a really, really engaging story.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So that's it for episode 3, and we're going to go ahead and throw it over to the sneak peek for episode 4. I hope you enjoyed it. Next time on The Shade Chronicles. Rafe slowed his glide through the passageway as he listened to Aiden's odd explanation. He started to feel something was off with Aiden. Aiden? When was the last time you ran a self-diagnostic? Rafe didn't get a response immediately, and that worried him. Aiden, did you hear me? I have just completed a self-diagnostic and all systems are operating within expected parameters. Aiden's reply seemed a little stiff, like it resented being asked to run a self-diagnostic. The fact that it was lying to him never crossed Rafe's mind. He held on to a piece of piping with his left hand while he removed the panel to the manual hatch override controls. Just as he was about to pull the lever to open the hatch, a shadow passed over him, and he realized a pirate had snuck up on him. He glanced over his shoulder to see the pirate leveling a gun at his helmet.
What if that was not the case and a stranger did show up, without explanation, literally from thin air, and not even during the event, but the next day? Seeing that the living room is empty, the child quickly tiptoes over to the front of the fireplace. While peering into the darkness of the fireplace with a slight squat stance and leaning right up to the darkness, the child takes a deep breath, then in a croaky whisper asks, "Are we ready?"
Thanks again for listening to The Shade Chronicles. For comments or inquiries, you can contact us at shadechron@gmail.com. That's SHADECHRON@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also get more information at theshadechronicles.com. The Shade Chronicles podcast is the creative property of Derek Leftridge and Lawrence Trokey. Stories in this podcast were the sole creation of Derek Leftridge and Lawrence Trokey, respectively. Any attempt to replay for broadcast or distribution portions of any episode of the Shade Chronicles without the prior written consent from the creators and/or significant compensation is strictly prohibited. Shame on you for even thinking about it in the first place. Thanks again for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of the Shade Chronicles.